Greetings. Hello, everyone. My name is Shemsu-t or Rita Stewart, depending on how you know me and how we interact in life, right? And for those of you who have been following me, this is Patiently Waiting for Nothing, the podcast. I actually started this last year with several guests. It may have been the year before. Anyway, we actually had some amazing conversations, actually about 14 of them. So if you have not had a chance to listen to the previous recordings, please, I invite you to go and listen to them because we will start, when we actually start talking about the themes in the book, we will start at number 15. So that means this is podcast number 15. And I would like for you to know that I am the owner of Masterforce and the founder of Masterforce International Leadership Academy. And I have been operating as a life coach for now over 30 years. And the work that I have been doing primarily started off with youth, started off with young people. And I was very excited when I discovered that that really was a part of my life path. I had no intention of doing that. I had no idea that that's where my life would go or where I would be led to go. However, we're not talking about Masterforce today. We're talking about patiently waiting for nothing. And I wanted to start off this first podcast of the year talking about the birth, the actual birth of the book. For those of you who haven't gotten the book, the e-version, the ebook version is available on Amazon. We probably will be doing another publication of the book within the next year or so. We probably have a 25-year anniversary coming up. Isn't that funny? I don't think about that because the book is still relevant. I published it, I wrote it in 2001, and it was actually published in 2003, I believe. But let me tell you the story of its beginning, because I'm still so fascinated by how things unfold and how they just become their own gift to me, even though I'm the one who's producing it, right? That's really interesting. So my daughter was in her senior year of high school, and I would take her to school every day. And as I was coming back from taking her to school, which is a different direction that I would go to take her to school, right? Mostly because I was in a hurry to get her there. And so when I'm coming back, I was more leisurely about it. So when I'm coming back from taking her to school, dropping her off at school, there was this home that I would pass, and on the garage door, it actually had a full statement that said, "Fully joyful, patiently waiting for nothing." Right? Did you hear that? Fully joyful, patiently waiting for nothing. And, every time I would see the statement, I would get moved by it and I would begin to question myself. I knew that I was present to joy in my life, and it was not attached to anything that I had. It wasn't attached to any work that I was doing at the time. It was literally inside of my living, inside of me and who I was, right? So I knew what fully joyful meant, and I was working to access that on a daily basis. However, what I did not get clear, I wasn't clear about yet, was patiently waiting for nothing. And you can actually look at that in several ways. Patiently waiting for nothing could have more than one meaning. It could actually mean that I am being patient, right? but I'm not going to wait for anything. It's, like I'm going to get what I want. I'm being patient, but I'm going to go get what I want. Or it could mean I'm patient and there's nothing that I want. I'm not in the state of wanting anything. So I'm patiently waiting for nothing, because everything that I am, that I desire, that I require is here within me, right? So I'm torn between what meaning that is for me. So finally, one Friday, after, contemplating, being in my head about it, I decided that I would journal about it. Some of you, like to journal. That's one of the things when I'm opening or working to clear my mind or get to a deeper level inside of what my consciousness is trying to share with me, I'll journal. So I got home and I, pulled out my legal pad and I started looking at, if I was really looking to be fully joyful, patiently waiting for nothing, what was currently in my way? What was stopping me from accessing that right now? What was there for me? And so I began making this list. And the first thing that showed up was fear. Fear was the first thing, being afraid to step out, being afraid of criticism, being afraid of failure, whatever you wanted to say about it, being afraid that I wasn't ready yet, whatever that was. I saw that fear was present. So I wrote fear, and then I wrote down a list. I just wrote the whole list. And that list became the things inside of the book, which I wasn't writing a book yet, right? But it became the things that I wrote about. But after I made this list, it ended up being 27 different items that were in my way personally. So I said, oh, I want to write about each one of these. So then I went and opened up my computer, right? I opened up the computer and I started writing about each one. So I wrote about fear, and I wrote about aloneness, and I wrote about depression, racism, discrimination. I wrote about all of those things that were bothering me inside of being fully joyful, patiently waiting for nothing. I wrote about each one of them. And when I tell you I wrote about them, I mean, I could not stop writing. And this, I remember this so well because it was a Friday night. I had gone over to the liquor store and got me a bottle of Merlot, which is my favorite wine to drink when I'm writing or doing anything actually. But anyway, I, set the bottle there and I was writing, and I wrote all night long Friday night till about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I got up and I went to bed. And then at 9 o'clock, I woke up again and I started writing again. I wasn't hungry. I had some water, some tea, maybe even coffee. I don't even know if I was drinking coffee at that time. And I began writing everything else. And I remember my daughter and her boyfriend at the time came in and they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'm just writing. I'm writing. I said, it seemed like it could be a book. And her boyfriend said to me, he said, "Well, where are you getting the information from?" I said, "It's coming out of my head. It's just flowing from me." And it just, it seems like I'm just downloading it. It's just flowing now. In 2001, I was not present to downloading like I am now. Now it's the everyday thing, but then I wasn't, So they were just blown away. So I spent all day writing and again all night. And I believe I finished late on Saturday night or early Sunday morning. But when they they were at my house. And so Sunday morning, I had printed out everything that I had written. And I asked them to go out to breakfast with me. I said, will you go to breakfast with me and look over this and tell me what you think of it? I said, because it looks like it could be a book, you know, something that other people may want to read, right? So they said, sure. So they went out and they were looking, and they were just so encouraging. They were so inspired. They just gave me so much inspiration, and how they took to it. And they thought that it was relevant and it would make a difference. And they were like, wow. And I remember asking my daughter, you know, after they, you know, were really moved by it, I remember asking her that night, I said, well, it would really make a difference for me if you would edit it, if you would go through it and, you know, make sure my wording is right, make sure my sentence structures, because my daughter is extremely smart, right? And she's a senior in high school, so she should know these things, right? She knew how to edit. Well, I knew she knew how to edit, right? So she did that. She did exactly that. And the next day when she came from school, she gave it back to me and showed me the change. And she said, but you know what, mommy, she said, I like what you're saying, but I think that this needs to be a conversation between between people, like there's somebody lecturing or telling somebody this stuff, like they're sharing with someone, you know, it's not just being read. She said, I see somebody listening to this. And I said, oh, okay, I hadn't thought of it like that. And I hadn't occurred to me that it needed to be somebody talking to someone. So that Monday evening, I sat and I thought, and I said, okay, who could be talking to someone? Who is the person listening and who is the person speaking? And one of my favorite authors came to me, Khalil Gibran. I read Khalil Gibran. I first started reading The Prophet when I was 8 years old. It's just you know, anybody that knows me knows that God has always ministered to me through books. I mean, always, every topic, right? And someone had left that book. My grandmother used to work at the Hilton Hotels. She worked there for 25 years. She retired from there. And if they left a book in the room, she would bring them home to me. So this was one of the many books that she brought home to me to read. And I loved that book, you know, and of course there was no one my age reading it, but I loved it. Anyway, I thought of Khalil Gibran in The Prophet, and in there, the person that was speaking was a teacher, and it was somebody that everybody, and a very humble person. The Prophet was not someone that, you know, felt like they were over anyone. It was just someone that people listened to, right? And he became the prophet because of so much of what he said was true about life, and it actually unfolded into life and became real if you lived inside of the teachings, right? So I tried to sit and think, or I did sit and think and say, well, who in our society would be a prophet that people would listen to, or that they needed to listen to? And what came to me was Miss Helen. I don't know anybody. I didn't know anybody particular named Miss Helen. Well, I know Miss Helen from my childhood, but the person that I wrote about was not that Miss Helen. Miss Helen was a homeless woman that lived in downtown Chicago, and people knew her and people fed her and took care of her. And when she went by their store, you know, the bakery, the store, before they would throw away anything, they knew to save it for Miss Helen. And Miss Helen was the type of person that when she collected food or items, she wasn't just thinking about herself. She wanted to share them with other people or with nature itself. So she would always collect bread. She would always collect bread and take it to the park. And you would find her on any day by, Grant Park, Lake Michigan, sitting there throwing bread to the birds and the squirrels and whoever else ate it, right? And she would just sit there and she would toss this bread, and it was always in abundance because people knew, first of all, that she was coming, so they reserved the bread for her. But she just always had a lot, and there were always a variety of stores that she would go to. So in the book, this one particular day, Miss Helen went to, she collected the bread and she went to Grant Park, and she sat on a bench and she's throwing the bread out, to the birds, and the birds are so excited to see her. They know that she's coming, don't care what the weather is or what, if they're out there flying, Miss Helen is coming to feed them. She's thinking about them on a daily basis. So the birds were always, so excited to see her. So she sits on the bench and she's throwing out this bread. And then all of a sudden, this young woman sits next to her and she's crying. She's sobbing, very hurt, not trying to be dramatic, but you could just sense this pain that was in her. And Miss Helen was the type of person that knew not to disturb her. So she just sat there and fed the birds. And then finally, after a few minutes, the woman says to her, she says, oh my goodness, she said, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at my life and I have so much and you have nothing, yet you seem to be so happy and content with your life. How did you get that way? How did you find so much contentment in who you are and what you do, and yet and still you have nothing? And Miss Helen just looked at her and smiled. And the young woman, went on to say, that she was just very unhappy in her job. She worked across the street at one of the buildings on Michigan Avenue, and she just had to leave the office because of how stressed out she was and how angry she was about life. And Miss Helen said, well, I have a lot that I can share with you, but I won't be able to do it on this park bench, and it will take longer than your lunch break or your break to even begin that conversation. And at which time, Bobby says to her, well, I would love to invite you over to my home for dinner and have you share with me what makes you feel so good about living the life that you live in the state that you live in. And that was how their friendship was formed. So you had Miss Helen, going over to Bobby's house, and Miss Helen was like, well, the first thing that I want to share with you is about fear. And she goes into, this short lecture, this short dialogue. And that's when the things that I wrote about in the book start showing up. And after they go through these 27 conversations, it's been about a month because Miss Helen has been going to see her on a regular basis, a daily basis, because Bobby did not live too far from where she worked, and Miss Helen was able to get to her home. And at the end of all of this, what ended up happening was Miss Bobby and Miss Helen formed a partnership where they would nurture other people in the community, whether it was homeless people, whether it was young mothers who needed a safe place to stay. They would make food and they would feed them and they would sit around and talk. And they decided that they needed to buy a place big enough for people to live in. And that formed this beautiful relationship. And it was all inside of learning how to be fully joyful, patiently waiting for nothing. So as we continue this conversation over the next few weeks, um, one of the things that I was able to distinguish in the book for myself, that I am both Miss Helen, right? The woman who's lived life more experienced inside of her own contentment, not necessarily complete with her journey, but knows what it means to work from her soul and live from her soul. And then I also know what it means to be Bobby, someone who is really driven to be successful in the corporate arena, make a difference, get raises, get pay, buy homes, buy cars, travel the world, as though that contentment was something outside of me. And so I've lived and continue to live both those people, except for I retired from corporate America when I was 41. So I no longer do my work inside of the quest to make a difference for corporate America. I literally do work inside of making a difference for my community and those people who are initiated on the path of doing their soul work. So as we go through this podcast over the next few weeks, as I stated earlier, we got to session 14, where we were talking about the different themes in the book. So the next time that you listen to me, we will start with the theme, which is going to be number 15. However, I'm not going to continue to go, down the way that down the way that the themes are actually laid out in the book. What I'm actually going to do is write out the remaining topics in the book. I'm going to start there, and I'm going to write them out on individual sheets of paper, and I'm going to put them in a bowl. And for each week's podcast, I'm going to draw what topic we should discuss. And I'm going to invite people to participate with me inside of a conversation about that during that podcast. But we will literally pull out the book, read what the book says about that, and then have people give their insight and their experiences about dealing with it. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be very interactive. And for this first 2 weeks, it's going to be just me giving a short synopsis of what there is to come. And then we will start the actual live participation on the 20th of January. Okay. So in the meantime, the way that you can prepare for this adventure with me is to, first of all, get a copy of the ebook, Patiently Waiting for Nothing by Shemsu-t, and go ahead and read it. Go ahead and read it. And also, as you read it, go ahead and journal about the things that come up. And you'll see that I tell you in the introduction, this is not about you agreeing. This is not about agreement. This is about us being able to have a dialogue that would expand us and have both of us be in a different place after our discussion. So it's not about me being right and my version or my perspective is the only perspective. No, this is about you hearing my perspective and me hearing your perspective, and then maybe seeing something completely different, and both of us having an expansive view of the world that we didn't have before, right? So it's not even about agreeing to disagree, because it doesn't have to be a disagreement. It's just that our perspectives can be very different. So I invite you to join me every week for the next year, because it's going to take a while for us to do this, because once we get from 15 to 27, I am going to add the other topics in that we did before, so that we can have a full journey of your participation inside of being fully joyful and patiently waiting for nothing. So that's an introduction for this year's version of my podcast. And you can reach me on, I'm actually have a lot of presence on social media. So I'm Shemsu-t on Instagram and Twitter. And you can also find me on LinkedIn as Rita Stewart, and you can find me on Facebook as Rita Stewart or Shemsu-t. You can also find me on my website, masterforceleadershipacademy.com. And we do have a new certification course. I've been certifying life coaches now for over 10 years. We've certified hundreds of life coaches, and they're all over the world because our work is online. So you can live anywhere and get this work done. So we have another, our spring, MFC Spring 2022 will start with the new year, April 2nd. We always start in the spring and we start in the new year. So I invite you to join us if you're looking to be certified as a life coach. If you're not looking to be a life coach, we also have a new version of that course starting, called the Master Force Life Course. So it gives you a significant amount of the information that we learn through the certification course, but the difference being you're not taught to coach. You're actually taught how to use the work on yourself, which is what the coaches are taught too. But in the coaching sessions, we're teaching you how to develop a practice, how to grow a business. We're not doing that with the life course. With the life course, you're taught you're giving some very amazing spiritual tools, some methodologies, some insights, some ways of being that will assist you in growing a stronger sense of your soul work and your gift, your life purpose. What are you here for? What are you doing? And what's in your way from not doing what you know you should be doing? You'll get answers to all of that through the Master Force Life course. And we're offering a special pricing right now. It's only $199 for 13 weeks. And in that 13-week course, you work with a buddy who's also in the course with you. And we also assign mentors. So you will have someone who has been certified as a life coach working with you to gather and get an understanding of the material that you're going through in the book. It's really been amazing to see this work unfold, because again, that was one of those things that Spirit told me to do, and I had no clue what I was doing and why I was doing, but I was being obedient and I followed exactly what I was told to do. And now here we are, over 10 years, 12 years later, and we have coaches all over the world who are making a huge difference, a huge difference. And our work is not about being popular. Our work really is about making a difference. So I invite you, that course is enrolling now. You can find the link, either on Master Force on Facebook, or you can find it on our website. Okay, and I invite you to join us, become a part of the Master Force family. We are just an amazing group of healers and teachers and spiritual leaders and astrologers and Reiki masters. I mean, it's just a beautiful community of loving individuals who really know what it means to give to others and having them expand in their capacity to make a difference in the world. So thank you. So that's it for this week. I thank you for joining me. I look forward to you being with me next week when we also begin to look at what it means to delve into the work and to research and find ourselves inside of conversations we know absolutely nothing about. Okay, so this is Shemsu-t signing off podcast, and this is the first one for 2022. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you next week. Bye.